We like to think of the press as the fourth estate, a watchdog keeping power in check. We imagine brave journalists speaking truth to power, holding the powerful accountable. But this image, while comforting, is largely a myth. The media, in reality, often acts more like a lapdog than a watchdog, serving the interests of the powerful instead of challenging them. This is not to say that every journalist or media outlet is inherently corrupt. However, the system within which they operate is structured in a way that inherently limits their ability to truly challenge the status quo. To understand how this works, we turn to the propaganda model, a concept developed by Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky. This model argues that media outlets, despite appearances, operate through a set of filters that shape the information we receive. The first filter is ownership. Media organizations are largely owned by massive corporations, and their primary interest is profit, not necessarily truth-telling. The second filter is advertising. Media outlets rely heavily on advertising revenue, and advertisers naturally prefer to associate themselves with content that doesn't rock the boat. This creates pressure to avoid content that might alienate advertisers, even if that content is important or truthful. The third filter is sourcing. Journalists rely on information from official sources, such as government officials or corporate spokespeople. This creates an inherent bias towards these sources, even if their information is incomplete or misleading. The fourth filter is flack, which refers to negative responses to media content. This can take many forms, from angry phone calls to lawsuits to boycotts. Media outlets are naturally hesitant to publish content that might generate flack, even if that content is newsworthy. Finally, there's the fifth filter, which Herman and Chomsky identified as anti-communism. While the specific target may change over time, the underlying principle remains the same. The media will tend to demonize and marginalize viewpoints that challenge the prevailing capitalist ideology. The propaganda model, while theoretical, plays out in the real world in disturbing ways. Take the Watergate scandal, for example. While the media rightfully scrutinized Nixon's actions, the focus remained largely on the break-in itself, which targeted the Democratic Party. Less attention was given to the broader context of government surveillance and illegal activities targeting less powerful groups. Another example is the Vietnam War. For years, the media largely presented the war as a noble effort to contain communism. It wasn't until elite consensus began to shift, driven by concerns about the war's cost and its impact on American interests, that media coverage became more critical. The contrasting coverage of Cambodia and East Timor provides another stark example. While the Khmer Rouge's atrocities in Cambodia received extensive and justified media attention, the Indonesian government's equally horrific actions in East Timor, supported by the US, were largely ignored. This disparity in coverage can be attributed to the political interests at play. The Iran-Contra affair offers another example. The scandal revolved around the Reagan administration's illegal sale of arms to Iran. However, media coverage focused primarily on the violation of congressional prerogatives rather than the underlying illegality of the operation itself or the administration's support for brutal regimes in Central America. These examples highlight a troubling pattern. The media often serves to reinforce existing power structures and maintain the status quo. This is not necessarily a result of malicious intent, but rather a consequence of the structural forces at play. Elite consensus, a set of shared assumptions and beliefs held by those in power, sets the boundaries of acceptable discourse. The media, operating within this framework, tends to reinforce these assumptions rather than challenge them. The societal purpose of media, then, becomes not to inform the public and empower them to participate in a democratic society, but to manufacture consent for the policies and actions of the powerful. This is achieved through selective reporting, framing issues in ways that favor elite interests, and marginalizing dissenting voices. However, it's not all doom and gloom. Counterforces do exist. Public access channels, non-commercial radio and television, and the internet offer avenues for alternative viewpoints and independent journalism. Grassroots activism and media literacy efforts are crucial in challenging media bias and promoting a more democratic media landscape.